Welcome to Tosche Station.
We're talking Star Wars.
Did Anakin become Darth Vader believably?
Okay, so right up front we have to put a disclaimer on this because we recognize that we're picking a little bit on the performances of Hayden Christensen and Jake Lloyd right away. We're going in and we're seeing them in the the prequel trilogy, and we're determining their performance based upon the original Darth Vader in the original series. And all we want to say about that is, first of all, that we recognize that the reason why Darth Vader in the original series is right was because he came first. We recognize that, and he was awesome. He was awesome.
Yeah.
The second thing we want to say about that is we recognize that lots of people made decisions that came to this this ultimate product of the Anakin Skywalker we see in the prequel trilogy. So we don't want to just be like, okay, we're just going to talk about Hayden Christensen and Jake Lloyd. We want to put this on everybody that made decisions about it, and we're going to be talking about some stuff that has to do with everything around them as well. All right, so Drew, let's get straight into this. Why is Darth Vader original trilogy awesome? What are we looking for? Go.
Okay, well, I think it all kind of starts with the very first time that we even saw Darth Vader. From the very moment that he came on screen for the first time, everybody in the audience, in the galaxy, all of a sudden, bam, we recognized that Darth Vader was in power.
The galaxy is in
He
fear.
was the man. And even at that time, we talked about earlier, the Emperor wasn't even really established. We didn't even know that there would be an Emperor. He kind of took that role immediately at that moment. So we felt that through the entire original trilogy. And that established Darth Vader very much. Another thing that I think really helped him along in that sense was that Darth Vader never told us about himself, really. Everything that we learned about Darth Vader's backstory came from Ben Kenobi. And all that didn't come from Ben Kenobi was Darth Vader telling Luke, I am your father. But it was done authoritatively as to have a purpose in controlling the galaxy. Join me and we'll defeat the Emperor and rule the galaxy as father and son. Everything he did was authoritative. And I think that really put the hammer down as far as establishing the character of Darth Vader and making him a legend in our world.
Yeah, and I'll just add something to this. It's kind of a Batman move when I say this, that Darth Vader was an idea. He was an idea. He was the ultimate evil. He was the bad guy. And he carried this idea so strongly and prominently. David Prowse, big guy, presence, automatic physical presence. Then, of course, as you mentioned earlier, you got the lightsaber factor. He had the red lightsaber. There was a lot of cool factor that came from that. And so there was a lot of initial wow that came along with this guy. This is a villain unlike we've ever seen before. And I think anybody will admit, I think he was number one on the top 10 coolest villains of all time list that I watched just the other day. I mean, because he's just totally awesome. So we have to admit that he's got something very unique and very special that Hayden Christensen, Jake Lloyd, and all those working on that project kind of need to live up to. And let's say this, before we go into critiquing that stuff, what are we looking for? Yoda said it best. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. We see the pattern that the dark side goes through, so that's what we're looking for. Darth Vader's in full-fledged suffering mode. So let's step back, let's look at the old, or the prequels rather, and look through that lens a little bit. Fear, anger, hate, suffering. What do you think? Jake Lloyd, episode 1.
All right. Well, because we're kind of establishing this on the sense of the emotions, the fear, anger, and hate, I'll say this. It's very difficult to establish a solid emotional character at such a young age. I personally thought that, we talked about it a little bit. Jake Lloyd was fine, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But his character, he was so young, you can't really bring a solid Darth Vader out of that. I could see Jake Lloyd growing up to be evil. I could see Jake Lloyd growing up to be good. It doesn't matter at that age. That age really kind of happens at 10 to 13. So I thought that character should have started at least 14. But as far as the fear aspect, yeah. I thought Jake Lloyd, I mean, he was afraid. He just left his mother. He's in this new place with new rules, trying to become a Jedi with a council that doesn't even want him. Mm-hmm. I'd be afraid. You know, he's like 9 years old.
Some of the setup was really good. You had, he was birthed out of nothingness. Now, while I have comments about that, but as far as it goes, him being like an orphan almost, he has no father. He doesn't have a good role model in that way. His life is a little bit shaky. He's a slave. He's his early life is rocky. It's not very stable at all. So in that sense, I really dig his background. I'm with you on the fact that Jake Lloyd, he just played a kid, and that's all right. I think that the decision was made. I think he was a little too young too. I think he could have been started later. I do appreciate the fact, though, they take into consideration the huge impact that those formative years can have. But once we see the jump to Hayden Christensen on episode 2, you just feel like you're looking at a completely different character. That's the bottom line to me. I felt like there was a completely different guy looking at me episode 2.
And before we move on to Hayden Christensen, which we will do in a moment, I just want to say that a lot of you will be commenting on how Jake Lloyd, he was terrible at the acting, terrible at the presenting of the lines. And I would argue that, for all you people, that for a kid who is learning how to act, you need a good director to be able to pull that out of them. So I have a hard time critiquing any kid actors when the director is really for blame. So in that sense, I would lean in that direction. So I'm not against Jake Lloyd in that way. I would put it on the authority.
We want to bump him a little credit in this area. We want to give him a little credit. We feel like just in general in the prequel trilogies that maybe all of the actors didn't get the support that they needed throughout the entire prequel trilogy. So we can talk more about that at a later date. Absolutely. But anyway, okay, so we're going on to episode 2 now. Hayden Christensen, episode 2, Darth Vader. How did you feel about his performance?
To start off, weakest of the 3. For this very reason.
Prequels.
Weakest of the 3 prequels. We're talking about anger, technically, if we're going fear, anger, hate in respect to the 3 movies. He was so whiny, and everybody sees that, babyface, that's not all his fault, the way he looks, but it came across as so whiny, so dependent. And I can't see Vader like that. I can't see Vader as a whiny kind of new Jedi almost. And I have a hard time looking back on it. I have a hard time seeing him in that sense at all. I feel like when Vader is angry, he would be more breaking stuff. He would be more consolidated and not really expressing his emotion.
Vader's more of a bull. A bull is like really chill and calm, but you get it mad and just like you're done. That sort of thing. Yeah, I feel that. Yes. And I think when I look at episode 2 and Hayden Christensen's performance, I see a lot of the whine as well. I'm going to note something about him though. Hayden Christensen, dude, when you went angry, you got it right. When you got angry, you got it right. Because I'm talking sand people here. I'm talking about when he was chopping down sand people. That
he conveyed a lot of anger in that scene.
Rocked.
He really did. And we have to give him credit.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about it in episode 3 stuff. But Hayden Christensen, I think when he came in, they saw him get angry. They went, that's my guy. But then he didn't get the direction he needed to really convey the traveling there, the course there. He just ended up being kind of whiny, cryy baby.
It was a difficult.
So let's move on to episode 3. Y'all can comment about that. There's obviously a lot more in there. Oh, I did want to say about episode 2 that we did get to see a lot of bonding, or I think in certain moments we got to see good bonding between him and Obi-Wan. We got to see good just development as far as his recklessness. He's mentioned to be fairly reckless and to be a great pilot. We got to see that scene where he's piloting the ship and stuff. Whether you like that scene or not, it was conveying those things. So I want to say that I appreciate that, and I did notice that. Let's go ahead and move on to episode 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Episode 3 now.
That
being said, I thought his performance in terms of bonding with Obi-Wan, in terms of maybe even recklessness, was conveyed better in episode 3.
Sure.
So those of you who disagreed with him, feel free to side with me. But, I thought that the bonding, especially in the brotherly sense, how Ben Kenobi brought in the aspect that he was a good friend.
Right.
And that was very well established in episode 3. As far as the hate, staying on the format that we're going with here. As far as the hate, I thought it was rushed. I really did. I thought, we saw there was a relationship with him and Palpatine, but Palpatine was more deceiving him than enveloping hate, I thought. Anakin just wanted to save his wife. He just wanted to save Padme from this death. Yeah. And, he thought that through the dark side he could get this power. It wasn't hateful. It wasn't really Vader even. It was just kind of saving someone.
Yeah. Made me feel like we were still in the fear state. We're still in fear. Now, to be fair, you can go from fear to hate pretty quick, and that's fair. But the change was still really abrupt. Like, suddenly he was a bad guy.
Yeah, like he killed Mace Windu, and bad. Because just the scene before that, he went and turned Palpatine in.
Yeah.
Like I can sense the confusion. No, I see the confusion conveyed there. I see the confusion conveyed there, but I don't see the hate.
Yeah.
The hate for anything. It kind of popped up after he was a Sith, which doesn't give him much time for that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Now, let's go ahead and mention some other stuff. I mean, I think Hayden Christensen, again, killed it. Let's talk about his best scene. When he had no arms and no legs, man, he killed it.
Anger.
Awesome job. Hate. Dude, you nailed it. Good job. Mm-hmm. That was definitely his best scene. And I'll say this. We said this earlier. I'll say it for both of us. In that moment, you go, oh, hey, Vader. There you are.
Yeah.
There he is. Found him. And I think that, in and of itself, the fact that he had that scene that hit me like that, well done. Well done. Excellent.
Now, I don't want to leave out the part in Episode 3 where he actually puts on the Vader suit. It's a rather brief part, but I will include it for this reason. We talked about David Prowse earlier and his look. And not to bring down Hayden Christensen's brightest moment in Star Wars with the burning scene, but the scene that came after that where he became Darth Vader and he stood up and he did that whole no thing. First of all, I don't like the no thing, but just the way he looked, it was rough. It was much smaller than Darth Vader. And in order to end on a high note, it didn't really work for the movie. But that being said, thank you, Hayden Christensen, for trying.
Way to end on a high note.
Yeah.
I did want to say this real quick. We do also see a progression with his relationship with Amidala, with Padme through 2 and 3. I wanted to say about that it felt like they just didn't spend enough time creating real relationship. Need we mention the rolling through the grass?
Please.
Need we mention? I don't think we're going to. The bottom line is what we saw from Anakin. If it was supposed to be an impassioned man who gets broken and then filled with hate, you just missed the mark. We see the pieces, but they just didn't come together.
They did make a decent progression from bad to better.
Yeah.
So give him that. I give him.
All right. So that's all we're going to say about this. That's all we got.
Yes.
Well, no, we got a lot more. But
plenty.
Make sure you comment down below. Let us know what you think about Hayden Christensen, Jake Lloyd, the progression from Vader to Vader. I should say Skywalker to Vader. Let us know what you think about that. So comment below. Subscribe to Tosche Station for more Star Wars talk. And as always, may the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.